just trying to chill. I'm just trying to live a peaceful life. That's why I live in Ohio. You know, I live in a little town in Ohio. It must be like 3,700 people, small hippie town. Culturally, it might feel like Ann Arbor to you. You know what I mean? Just a bunch of hippies and shit like that. And niggas always ask me, like, Dave, why you live in that hippie town? And I'd be embarrassed to tell them the truth. But you know why I live there? Because Yellow Springs, Ohio has the most beautiful women in the world. And a lot of people might disagree with me, but you gotta see them for yourself. They're gorgeous. But it all depends on what you're into, you know what I mean? I like white bitches with dirty feet. If I had a strip club in Yellow Springs, I would call that shit strippies. All naked hippies all the time. And I'd only hire girls with long titties and long vagina hair that looks like they slept on it. And I would keep a pile of dirt right next to the stage. I come like, bitch, get your feet in that dirt and get up there and give those people what they came to see. Chalk up, bitch. A couple years ago, I was in Ohio at a shopping mall. An old white lady, this is true, she was following me around the mall, which sounds paranoid, but I'm sure she was following me. Mean lady, too. You ever see a woman with lines on her face that just tell you, like, even if she smiled, it looked like it would hurt the muscles in her face? I knew she was following me because she was at places that had nothing to do with her. I'd be looking around like, what is this old bitch doing in GameStop and Foot Locker and all the places I like to go? Every time I see her, she'd just be looking at me on me. And eventually, I forgot about her. So then after I'm shopping, I go all the way to the back of the parking lot. I'm parked all the way in the back, and as soon as I open my car door, I hear a voice go, David Chappelle. Just like that. I didn't even have to look. I knew it was her. And I looked back, and sure enough, there she was, that face. To be honest with you, she probably wasn't even that old. She's probably around my age. But she was a white woman. This bitch looked terrible. Going all the way. I kept my cool. I was nice. I said, hello, miss. And she didn't say anything back. All she said was, I watch your comedy. I said, uh-oh. And then she says, this is true, she goes, it sounds to me like you hate women. I said, well, you know what, miss? It's art. And you're free to interpret this art however you'd like. But I can tell you, as the maker of this art, that I don't believe that I feel that way. And she said, well, I think. And I said, shut up, bitch. Shut the fuck up. Before I kill you and put you in the trunk. Ain't nobody around here. I'm just kidding, I didn't say that. I felt that way, but that's not what I said. I was more clever than that. You know what I said? And this is exactly what I said. I said, miss, before you finish that statement, let me ask you a question. Where'd you see me? Did you buy a ticket to a concert I did? I doubt that. Or maybe you watched one of my specials on Netflix. Or did I follow you to your car and do my act? She said, what? I said, keep it in the comment section, bitch. This is real life. Ta-ta. And then I drove off. Now, I gotta tell you, and this is gonna surprise some people here, but not everybody. People say things to me all the time, but what you don't know is it does affect me. I think about it. And that one bothered me a lot. I was driving home, couldn't stop thinking about what this woman said because she's not the first woman that said that to me. It's puzzling. You know what I mean? Like, what could I possibly be saying that would make these bitches think I hate women? Couldn't figure it out. So you know what I did? I Googled the dictionary definition of a feminist just to make sure I was talking about the right thing. And do you know, sir, what the dictionary definition of a feminist is? I didn't either. Listen to this. Webster's defines a feminist as a human being, not a woman, a human being that believes in equal rights for women. I was shocked that that's what that meant. Because by that definition, I would consider myself a feminist. And I didn't even know that at the time. All these years, I thought it meant frumpy dyke. Well, that's who's always talking, to be some chick in overalls. Men are trying to rape us. Ah, not you, bitch, we please. I know, look, listen. I support the feminist movement, I do, in my own ways. When you guys did the Women's March, I tried to go and support you. And none of my friends would go with me. I asked all the fellas, none of them wanted to go. I tried everything. Come on, y'all, it's gonna be bitches there. They was like, nope. So what I did is I called my friend Ange. Ange is a black woman who's a comedy writer, and she's dope. Matter of fact, she's the only woman that I know personally that pays her ex-husband alimony. And she sounds just like a man when she does it. Fuck that broke motherfucker and all that. She says all that shit. So I hit Ange up, and I hit her on the text. And all I did, I texted her, I said, Ange, are you going to the Women's March? And she texted me back, and this is a real text. She said, I hope those white bitches get tear gassed. There's a problem in that feminist movement, isn't there? From its inception in America, there's always been a racial component. When Susan B. Anthony was having that meeting and Sojourner Truth's black ass showed up, read your history books. All them white women asked Sojourner Truth not to speak. They didn't want to conflate the issues of women's rights and slavery. But you know how black bitches are. Sojourner Truth went up there anyway. She did a famous speech. She said, ain't I a woman? Ain't I a woman? That's right. And listen. I supported the Me Too movement, but the whole time, I thought that the way they handled that was stupid. It was white. It was like, they were doing shit like going to the Golden Globes, and all of them would be like, let's all go to the Golden Globes and wear black dresses to give these men a piece of our minds. Bitch, that is not gonna work. You think Martin Luther King's gonna be like, I want everybody to keep riding the bus, but wear matching outfits? You gotta get off the bus and walk. It's real talk. Real talk, that was a silly movement. I want everybody to wear a crocheted pussy hat so they know we're serious. What the fuck was y'all doing? And then I said something about it in one of my specials, and all these women actresses came after me. I said, man, fuck y'all too, you canceled. I ain't jerking off to none of your pictures again. They were like, who is he to tell us anything? I'll tell you exactly who I am. I'm the one that got off the bus and left $50 million on the bus and walked. I agreed with these women. I just didn't agree with what they were doing about it. Right. No, it was annoying as fuck. Because if these women were serious, you know what they would have done? They all would have fired their agents. And they would have went to the mailroom of one of these big agencies and found a woman that was busting her hump in there and said, if you want to talk to us, then you have to talk to her. And if they did that, and she would be big, and they would be big, and nobody would get fed to Harvey Weinstein. But did they do that? No. Was that their idea? No. Surprisingly, it was mine. And what I think the feminist movement needs to be very successful is a male leader. I'll do it. I will. I will lead you women to the promised land. I will make sure you get equal pay for equal work. I will make sure that nobody harasses you or fucks with you on the job. I will protect all of your interests. And all that I ask for in return is that you suck my dick. And now we're right back to square one, aren't we?
Here is a 30-minute commentary from a woman watching the video titled Dave Chappelle on Why I Really Love Ohio. I found this clip late last night, and I've been thinking about it ever since. The title is simple enough, Dave Chappelle on Why I Really Love Ohio. And if you only know Dave from the early specials, the ones where he's in San Francisco or New York, wearing that leather jacket, doing the Rick James thing, you might think this is going to be a joke. You might think, oh, he's going to make fun of Ohio. He's going to talk about cornfields and snow and how boring it is. But that's not what this is. This isn't a joke. This is a love letter, and it's a confession. He walks out, and right away there's a different energy about him. He's not in a club in Manhattan, he's on a stage somewhere, and the backdrop is simple, but he has this ease to him. He's wearing a hoodie, I think, or something casual. He looks comfortable. Not comfortable like a performer who knows his material, comfortable like a man who just walked in from his backyard. And he sits down and he doesn't do the big bombastic opening. He just looks out and says, I live in Ohio. I live in a little town called Yellow Springs, and people always ask me, Dave, why? Why would you live there? You could live anywhere. You could live in Paris, you could live in Malibu, you could live on a private island. Why Ohio? And he pauses. And in that pause you can see him actually considering the question, even though he's probably been asked it 1,000 times. He's not giving a rehearsed answer. He's reaching for something deeper. He takes a breath and says, because Ohio is quiet. And I needed quiet. Now I'm sitting here listening to this, and I'm thinking about noise. Not just the noise of traffic or cities, but the noise of expectation. The noise of people telling you who you are. Dave Chappelle, at the height of his fame, walked away from $50 million. $50 million. And he went home to Ohio. And for years, people called him crazy. They said he threw it away. They said he lost his mind. But listening to him talk now, you realize he didn't lose his mind. He was trying to save it. He starts talking about what it feels like to be famous. And he does this thing with his hands, like he's trying to hold on to something that's slipping away. He says, when you become famous, you stop being a person. You become a thing. You become a symbol. People look at you and they don't see you. They see what they want to see. They see their hopes, their dreams, their anger, their whatever. And you're standing there, just trying to be a human being, and they're projecting a movie onto your chest. I've heard famous people talk about this before. The loss of self. The weirdness of being recognized everywhere. But Dave puts it differently. He puts it in terms of geography. He says, in New York or LA, I couldn't just be Dave. I was always Dave Chappelle, the guy from the show, the guy from the thing. Everywhere I went, someone wanted something. A picture, a conversation, a piece of advice, a piece of my energy. And I was giving it. I was giving it until I didn't have anything left for myself. He takes a sip of water, or maybe it's tea, something non-alcoholic I notice. There's a sobriety to his demeanor, not just in his drink, but in his spirit. He's clear-eyed. He says, so I went home. I went back to Ohio. And do you know what happened? I went to the grocery store, and nobody bothered me. I went to the diner, and the waitress called me hun, and asked if I wanted my eggs scrambled. She didn't ask me about the show. She didn't ask me about the money. She asked me about my eggs, and I almost cried. And the audience laughs, but it's a soft laugh, a knowing laugh, because there's something profoundly sad in that, isn't there? That a man who had everything the world tells you to want, fame, fortune, adoration, almost cried over being treated like a regular person ordering breakfast. He goes deeper into this. He starts talking about the land. He talks about his farm, the acres of land he owns in Yellow Springs, and he describes it in a way that's almost poetic. He talks about the way the light hits the fields in the morning, the way the fog sits in the valleys, the way the seasons change. He says, in Ohio, you feel the earth. You feel the winter coming, you feel the thaw, you feel the ground under your feet, and you remember that you're just a creature. You're just a man, not a brand, not an icon, just a man walking on dirt. And I'm thinking about how disconnected we all are from that. From dirt, from seasons, from the simple act of being a creature on a planet. We live in screens and cities and artificial light, and we wonder why we feel unmoored. Dave found his mooring in Ohio. He found it in the soil. He starts telling a story about a moment that changed him. He talks about being in his backyard, late at night, couldn't sleep. This was years ago, maybe around the time he first walked away from the show. He says he was sitting on his porch, wrestling with all the noise in his head. The contracts, the lawyers, the people calling him crazy, the voices telling him he ruined his life. And he says he looked up at the sky, and because he's in Ohio, because he's not in a city with all that light pollution, he could see the stars, all of them, a whole sky full of stars. And he says, I sat there looking at those stars, and I realized how small I was, not in a bad way. I realized that all that stuff, the show, the money, the drama, it was all happening on this tiny little speck of dust, floating in an infinite darkness. And the stars didn't care. The stars didn't know who I was. The stars didn't know what a television was. And I just sat there, and for the first time in years, I stopped thinking. I just sat, and I breathed, and I felt the night air, and I was okay. He looks at the audience, and his eyes are a little wet. He's not crying, but he's there. He's present. He says, that's why I love Ohio, because Ohio lets me see the stars, because Ohio lets me be small. Now, I'm thinking about my own life. I live in a city. I live in an apartment where I can see the building across the street, but I can't see the sky. And I'm realizing that I haven't looked at the stars in years. Not really, not like that. And I'm wondering if that's part of why I feel the way I feel sometimes. That constant low-grade anxiety. The feeling that I'm supposed to be doing something, achieving something, becoming something. Maybe I just need to be small for a while. Dave shifts gears a little. He starts talking about the people in Ohio. And this is where the comedian comes back out a little bit. He does a bit about the difference between how people treat you in LA versus how they treat you in Ohio. He says, in LA, someone sees you. They immediately calculate your value. What can you do for me? Who do you know? How much are you worth? In Ohio, someone sees you. They calculate if you need help changing a tire. That's the math. That's the only math. He talks about his neighbors. He doesn't name them, but you can tell he loves them. He talks about an old farmer down the road who for the first 5 years Dave lived there called him the young fella and never once mentioned that he was famous. And then one day, the farmer's tractor broke down and Dave helped him fix it. And after they finished, the farmer looked at him and said, "You're all right, young fella. You're all right." And Dave says, "That was the best review I ever got. Better than any critic, better than any award. A man who fixes tractors told me I was all right." And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Validation from people who don't care about your status. Being seen for who you are, not what you've done. Dave found a place where his fame was irrelevant. And that irrelevance, that lack of reflection, allowed him to actually become a person again. Not a symbol, a person. He talks about raising his kids in Ohio. And this is where I really lean in, because I think about what it means to raise children outside of the circus. He says, my kids, they don't know me as Dave Chappelle the comedian. They know me as Dad. And in Ohio, they can just be kids. They can ride their bikes. They can get muddy. They can make mistakes. without it ending up on the internet. They can have a childhood, a real one, not a curated one, not a branded one, just a childhood. He talks about the schools in Yellow Springs. He talks about the community. He talks about how his kids have friends whose parents are professors, farmers, mechanics, artists. He says, "My kids know all kinds of people. They know people who have PhDs and people who didn't finish high school, and they treat them the same. Because in Ohio, you learn that a person's worth isn't in their resume. It's in their character. It's in how they show up when things get hard." He tells a story about a winter storm that knocked out the power for a week. And he says, "You want to know what happened? The neighbors came out. We shoveled each other's driveways. We shared food. We brought firewood to the old folks. Nobody asked what anybody did for a living. Nobody asked how much money you had. We just took care of each other. Because that's what you do when the power goes out. You remember that you need each other. And I'm sitting here in my apartment with the Wi-Fi and the central heating, and I'm realizing that I don't know my neighbors. I've lived here for 3 years, and I couldn't tell you the names of the people in the apartment next to me. And Dave is describing a world that feels almost ancient, a world of mutual aid and actual community, and he found it in Ohio. He found it by going home. He talks about the racial dynamics too. He doesn't shy away from it. He talks about being a black man in a small town in Ohio. And he says, people think Ohio is just cornfields and white people. And there's plenty of that. But there's also Yellow Springs. And Yellow Springs is this little pocket of something else. It's a town that was part of the Underground Railroad. It's a town that has a history of abolitionists and activists and people who believed in something bigger than themselves. It's a town where a black man can walk down the street and people see him as a neighbor, not as a threat. Not all the time, not perfectly, but more than anywhere else I've been. He talks about the sense of belonging, and he says, you know what belonging feels like? It feels like being able to be quiet. You don't have to perform. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to be the representative of your race or your profession or your generation. You can just be. And that's what Ohio gave me. It gave me the space to just be. He goes back to the fame thing for a minute. He talks about how people in Ohio handled his success, or his notoriety, or whatever you want to call it. He says, when I came back, when I walked away from the show, everybody in New York and LA was saying I was crazy. The tabloids were saying I was on drugs. The industry was saying I was difficult. And in Ohio, my neighbors brought me casseroles. They brought me casseroles because they thought I was sick. They didn't think I was crazy. They thought, oh, the young fella must be going through something. Let's bring him a hot meal. He laughs here, and it's a genuine laugh, a laugh of gratitude. He says, that's the difference. In one world, you're a headline. In the other world, you're a neighbor who might need some chicken and rice. And I'll take the chicken and rice every time. He gets quiet again, and this is where the weight of the story really lands. He says, I love Ohio because Ohio saved my life. And I don't say that lightly. I say that as a fact. If I had stayed in LA, if I had stayed in New York, if I had stayed in that whirlwind, I wouldn't be here right now. I would have been consumed. I would have become one of those stories. The one where they say, remember him? He had it all, and then... He trails off. He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't have to. We all know what comes after the and then. We've seen it 100 times. The artists who burn out, the stars who flame out, the people who get eaten by the machine that they thought they were building.
He says, Ohio gave me a place to land. It gave me a place to heal. It gave me a place to remember who I was before anybody knew my name. And that's the thing, you have to remember who you were before the world told you who you were supposed to be. And you can't do that in the middle of the noise. You have to find somewhere quiet. You have to find your Ohio, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it's a small town. Maybe it's a cabin in the woods. Maybe it's just a room in your house where you turn off the phone and sit. But you have to find it, because if you don't, the world will take everything from you. Not your money or your stuff. It will take you. It will take your soul. He takes a breath. He looks out at the audience, and you can tell they're not laughing anymore. They're listening. They're leaning forward. He says, I'm not saying Ohio is perfect. It's not. There's cold winters. There's potholes. There's politics I don't agree with. There's all the stuff that comes with anywhere. But it's mine. It's the place I chose. And choosing it, choosing to be there,
choosing to stay there when everybody said I should leave. Because every day, when I wake up in that house, on that land, in that town, I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing peace. I'm choosing my kids. I'm choosing my life over my legacy. He says, legacy is for dead people. I'm alive. I want to live, and living means being somewhere you can breathe. Living means being somewhere you can walk into a diner and just be a person ordering eggs. Living means looking at the stars and feeling small and being okay with that. He stands up. He doesn't do a big closing joke. He just says, that's why I love Ohio. Because Ohio loves me back. Not the idea of me, not the comedian, not the icon. Just me. Just Dave. And that's enough. That's more than enough. And then he walks off. And the audience applauds. But it's not the applause you give for a punchline. It's the applause you give for truth. It's the applause you give when someone says something that you've been feeling but haven't been able to put into words. I'm sitting here, hours later, and I'm still thinking about it. I'm thinking about my own life. I'm thinking about the noise I've been living in. The notifications, the deadlines, the endless scroll, the feeling that I'm supposed to be building something, becoming something, proving something. And I'm wondering what my Ohio is. Where is the place where I can be small? Where is the place where I can see the stars? I don't have an answer yet. But I think that's the point. Dave didn't have an answer either, until he went and found it. He didn't find it in a book, or a podcast, or a guru. He found it in the dirt. He found it in the quiet. He found it by leaving the thing everybody told him to stay in. And maybe that's the lesson. Not that we all need to move to Ohio, but that we all need to find our version of it. The place, or the practice, or the people. The place where nobody wants anything from us except to know how we like our eggs. The place where we can look at the stars and remember that we're just creatures on a speck of dust. And that's actually a relief, not a disappointment. So that's my commentary. That's what I've been sitting with. I think I'm going to turn off my phone now. I think I'm going to try to find a patch of sky, even if it's just from my fire escape, even if the city lights drown most of it out. I'm going to look up, and I'm going to try to be small for a while.